When I lost weight after my first pregnancy with my daughter, this was back in 2018, I was losing the weight. It took about a year to lose that weight. And I remember going through such a strange transition because getting up to the weight that I got to, which was almost 175 pounds on that pregnancy. So I gained quite a bit. I gained like 50 pounds on that pregnancy. Getting up to that weight felt so foreign to me. And so it felt fairly easy to come down the first 10, 20 pounds, something like that. But then like the 130s and 140s felt so normal to me because I had lived in that space for a long time in my life earlier. Getting down to the 120s, 130s felt a little normal for me because I had been there before many times. But then when I started to come down below 120, it was a whole new game for some reason. We're going to talk a lot more about this kind of thing as we go. But I had to really, really adjust to the idea of being in the tens, right? The 110s kind of a thing. And this is a normal body weight for my size. I'm only 5'2", 5'3", but it took so much focus to change my mindset around that specific set of weights that I was now getting into. And I want to talk today a lot about that journey and how it relates to the final set of weight loss tools and eat to live tools that I'm going to give you today. Hi, I'm Cheri Alberts, and this is the Watering Mouth Podcast, and I'm going to teach you to eat to live, lose the weight, and love the process for good. Episode 6. Okay, so here we are on the 4th and final session in this series. We're talking about the 4 basics of eat to live and weight loss. This week, we are going to be talking about the emotional tools that I use to give you, like last week we talked about the emotional tools for mindset. This week we're talking about the heart. This week we're talking about that ooey gooey stuff that you might not be super good at yet or think that it's very important, but hopefully I can change your mind by the end of this podcast. All right. So this week is dedicated to the emotional tools that I give in the Eat to Live Academy and the Eat to Live family and all my private coaching to help someone release the weight, keep the weight off, and stay consistent. All right. Now, these are the tools of the heart. So I just want to read this little paragraph that I read once from an Eat to Live family member who just come into the family, and she had started looking through the materials and learning things in the academy and seeing how we do things in there. And I just want to read a post that she put up one time. Here's what she said. She said, "Thank you. I feel like this is a whole body, mind, soul experience of healing, surrendering, letting go of old thought patterns, memories, mentally and spiritually in my heart center, allowing more self-worth and love in, and physically integrating all this sort of holy trinity," she says. I couldn't have said it better, what we do around here. So what she's touching on is, it's kind of this word, the holistic, the whole person, right? So we're not talking about just the food. We're not talking about just how to eat to live or what things to eat or when you should eat them, just the sort of nitty gritty details. All of those things are quite important, and we definitely want to focus on educating ourselves on those aspects of the lifestyle. But we say lifestyle because it's not just about the food, and especially the way that I come at this with helping someone learn how to do this consistently, it has so much more to do with just that or just the weight loss. And so as we're wrapping up this series here, let me tell you a little bit about those tools, the 3 tools for our heart. Now, last week we talked about the mind, and the mind, talking about this idea that our thoughts create our feelings and our feelings create our actions. So if we want the actions of eating healthfully, the results of losing the weight, all that kind of stuff, we have to learn about the thoughts and the feelings first. So we learned about that last week and some of those tools that we can use. But this week, what I really want to talk about is the tools that maybe you're not sold yet are super important, right? It might be those tools that you don't necessarily believe you should focus on, because what you might be thinking you need to focus on is how to prep and plan better. And, if I could just get better at prepping, or if I could just get better at chopping or cooking, or if I didn't waste so much produce, or if I could just do this lifestyle without spending so much money, right? We're talking about these very small details that, yeah, we want to get good at those and they're important. But what is actually important is, number one, overall, our feelings. Feelings. Now, when we talk about feelings, we're like, like that can't be it. It has to be just about prep. It has to be just about the practical things. And as I say, those are important, but actually what's going to get you to where you need to go is by first concentrating on that inner work that we need to do on ourselves. So like things like, are we worth it? Do we deserve this time? Do we want to put ourselves first? If we get to that weight, can we keep it there because we think we don't deserve it? Or can we keep it because, we feel like it's something that we can maintain, right? See, so all of these thoughts go into it, but our thoughts create our feelings. So if we're constantly coming at this from a place of dejected, failure, lack of confidence, just feeling like we'll never make it, we never are going to make it. So how can we get our inner heart and inner mind in a place of deserving, calm, peaceful empowerment, like I always say, right? When we feel confident and we feel like this belongs to us, this is our identity, that's when we maintain. That's when maintenance and consistency become no big deal. Now, this is a concept that maybe you don't understand yet, but I want to maybe be the first one to tell you it. And I want you to just have an open mind when we go into this. And I want you to just consider, what if she's right? Okay. What if she's right? How could I incorporate this? Now I'm telling you that the things that we're going to learn here on this podcast, these are the deep ones, right? This isn't how much onion to chop every day and eat, right? This is the deep stuff. So we're talking deep-seated stuff that you've probably been carrying along with you, like baggage, right? Like this really heavy luggage with you your whole life. And maybe you don't even think about it. And maybe you don't even consider it. And you don't even think that it's important to work on it and to reduce that amount of baggage until the point where we can get rid of it. But here's the main point that I want to make first. If we want to be consistent with our healthy eating and our weight loss, and we want to put down all that stuff about, do I deserve it? Am I worthy of it? Will I be able to maintain it? So we want to put down all that stuff. The way to doing that is by acting now before we've gotten to our goal. We need to act now the way we're going to act when we've gotten to our goal. So everyone is always talking about challenges, right? And I do a lot of challenges for my audience as well, because it's my inroad to convincing you that this is the way, that it might work for you, and that, you should just give it a try. But actually, challenges are not the long-term goal, right? Why? Because challenges are, by definition, a short-term thing, right? It's a 5-day challenge. It's a 14-day challenge. It's whatever. It's a 21-day challenge. It's a however long challenge, but a challenge by definition has a, it's finite. It has an end, a beginning and an end. But when we really want to eat to live, and we really want to maintain that weight loss forever, we don't want to just be maintaining. We want it to just be our weight, all right? We don't even want to have to think about weight anymore in a way that is difficult or work or requires any kind of thought, really. We just want it to be who we are. We just want to be that, whatever our goal weight is, right? So in order to get there and stay there, we have to start learning to act that way now. So we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to know exactly what it's going to be like when we get there. But we can start practicing what that looks like. So for instance, let's say we wanted to weight train. Here's just a unrelated example. Let's say we wanted to tone our muscles and build our muscles, right? Let's just say tone our muscles. Say we've never really done much weight training in our life and we want to tone our muscles. we start toning our muscles, and we do maybe some HIIT workouts for a while, or maybe we do some yoga, or we do some, any of these things can get our bodies to a toned place. Now, let's say yoga, for instance, because that's pretty accessible to everybody. Let's say that we do yoga for 3 months, say, right? And we start to notice our body is really getting toned and strong, and we're becoming more flexible and all these kinds of things. Now, in order to maintain that, and in order to stay at that vision of ourselves, do we quit yoga at that point once we've gotten to that goal? No, of course not, right? We keep doing the yoga because the yoga is what got us to the place where we needed to go, where we wanted to go, where our goal was, right? But we don't just shut off what got us there thinking that that's going to just stay indefinitely, right? That's not how it works. Obviously, same thing with Eat to Live. Or it's like house cleaning, right? Like you take all this time to clean your house because you want it to be really clean. And once you get it there, cool. Now I can just relax for the rest of my life, right? I wish that's how it worked, but that's not how it works. If you want your house to stay clean, it's a constant thing. You just keep doing it, right? Another one that I always think of is, having kids. And I think one of the things that I really do not enjoy very much is having to feed them like 3 to 5 times a day. That's not my favorite pastime. Sometimes, I enjoy sitting down with them to a meal or whatever, but a lot of the times it's like, okay, lunchtime, now what are we going to eat, right? Okay, dinner time, now what are we going to have for breakfast, right? It's just this constant, always thinking about what we're going to be eating. Even if I use a meal plan, it's still like, I have to make the food, I have to plan ahead and do the things and make them the food and feed them and whatever. And so, but if I want the child to live, right, that's a thing we have to just keep doing. It's this idea it is the work, right? So in order for us to maintain whatever goal it is we're going for, we have to learn to act that way now. And we have to get good at acting that way until it becomes second nature, right? How did we get good at brushing our teeth? Well, we just brushed our teeth a lot, we didn't always complain about it. We did when we were little, and then we stopped complaining about it, and because we realized the benefits of it, right? So it takes this maintenance, but it's not just right. And so let me relate this now more towards what we're talking about today, which is the tools of the heart, the inner tools, the feeling tools here. So the things that we're going to talk about today, when we talk about the 4 basics of Eat to Live and weight loss, we have to understand and incorporate, embody the spirit of these tools. Now, you're not going to get it right away if you've never worked on this before, but we can keep working on it and getting better and better at it. And the better we get at it, the more it's going to affect our weight loss and healthy eating journey. Okay, so these tools, I've got kind of 3 buckets today. So one of them is sort of self-love, self-confidence, body image bucket, so to speak. Then we've got the self-care bucket, and then we have the worthiness bucket. Okay, now these 3 things that we're going to be talking about are all we talk about it very, very in depth in the Eat to Live family, which is, so in the Eat to Live Academy is my program, the digital coaching program that I have, which is part of the Eat to Live family. So the Eat to Live Academy is 8 weeks of lessons, videos, and it will teach you the foundation of my coaching program. If you were to become a private client of mine, and I put you through the Eat to Live Academy, you would have the whole foundation before we even got started. Then we could start to work on your personal things specific to you. So we start with the Eat to Live Academy because it gives all these tools first. And what we're talking about today and what we've been talking about for the last few weeks is specifically these things, okay? And we're going to keep going into this stuff. So you'll get more and more information on this as we go. But if you joined the Eat to Live family, which is my monthly affordable group coaching membership, we've got, hundreds of people in there doing all this work together and supporting each other. You get access to that Eat to Live Academy automatically just by being a family member. And so you can learn all that in there, okay? So let's talk number 1 about the first set of tools, which is self-love, self-confidence, and body image. Okay, so we're going to do this one real briefly because I have a much more in-depth program in the Academy on this. But the reason that I find this one so important is very similarly what I was just saying with the idea of wanting to act now and feel and think now the way what we're going to feel and think and act when we get to our goal. So the issue here is that everyone always thinks that when they get there, it's going to be so much better than when they get here. And the getting there is what's going to make them is the goal. right? So that once they reach that weight is what's going to make them love themselves at that point. Okay. Now, this is the biggest fallacy. This is the biggest issue in the weight loss community and also the healthy eating community, is that once we get really good at it, it's just going to be so easy and we're going to feel so much better. And just the being able to slip on our pants easily in the morning is going to make everything perfect, right? But here's the reality. This is I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but being able to slip your pants on easily, being able to go clothes shopping without having too much worry, only having one size of clothes in your closet, etc. That only creates one fun aspect of your life. But if you got to that place using self-hatred and self-loathing and, disgust and forcing yourself to do things that you don't want to do, when you get to that place of that weight loss, the last thing you're going to want to do is keep doing what you did to get there. Because what you did to get there was painful. Like, who wants to hate themselves for the rest of their lives? Who wants to, look in the mirror and beat themselves up for the rest of their lives? Because what happens is when we get there and we see that new reflection, it doesn't feel like us. We don't think we deserve it. We don't think it's us. It does not feel like our own identity. And so therefore we become attacked with our own thoughts again at that point of like, well, I don't deserve this. I'm never going to be able to keep it. It won't work. I can't hold on to this. This isn't me, right? Because what we've done the whole time is just beat ourselves up over it. So we weren't really accepting the journey. We weren't really learning to become good at the steps that it takes to do that. We just kept thinking, when I get there, that's going to make me feel better, right? But what we need to make us feel better is actually the journey. We actually need the steps that we take to get there to feel good. Because when we get there, that's sustainable, right? Feeling good about the journey, learning to love ourselves during the journey. So if we have done things throughout that journey in order to feel better, we will feel better when we get to the weight. And it won't be the weight loss or the understanding of how to use the kitchen tools and getting good in the kitchen and all that. It won't be those goals that make us feel better. It will be like just inherent that we feel better. Our thoughts will be so good at making us feel good that we will just always be able to do that whenever we need to. Now, it's not to say that life is always perfect and it's easy, but if we get good at those tools during the journey, that when we get there, that's when it's sustainable. Okay. So self-confidence, self-love, body image, these 100% come from our own thoughts about ourselves. Okay. Body image, self-love, self-confidence. It's 100% our thoughts. It's not what we weigh. It's not, what kind of clothes we wear or anything like that. Or especially it's not what other people think of us. Okay. It's 100% what we think of ourselves. So we say our thoughts create our feelings create our actions. So let's look at what self-love might look like. Self-love might be when we look in the mirror, no matter what we wear, no matter what size we are, we love ourselves anyways. How could that be possible? Now, this might be something that's really slippery for you right now. I know it was for me in the very beginning. But the idea is that if we hate ourselves now, I promise you that when you get to that weight, you're still going to hate yourself. You're just going to hate different things about yourself. And you're going to hate the fact that you feel like you can't keep it. You're going to hate the fact that you feel like you're not the type of person who can maintain that. And then you're just going to end up eating again and, going through that whole process all over again. But if we can learn to love ourselves during that journey, now we don't have to love ourselves this second, but we have to be learning to love ourselves in the process of learning to love that, so that when we get to that goal weight, it feels comfortable. We feel comfortable in our own skin and we love ourselves. Now, this is work. And the way that this works technically is with our thoughts. So our thoughts create our feelings. If our thoughts are all about self-loathing and hating ourselves and all that, that's what we're going to feel. We're going to feel self-loathing. And when we feel that kind of stuff, that's when we overeat. That's when we binge and all that kind of stuff. But if instead we can learn to shift our thoughts towards things like, I love myself at any size. I love myself no matter what my arms look like, or no matter what my stomach looks like. I still love myself. That creates feelings of self-love. It creates feelings of softness and tenderness. And when we feel those kinds of feelings about ourselves, our actions are much more positive. You see the difference there? But then the question is always like, well, how do I get to those thoughts? That's the rub there. So we have a lot of tools in the Eat to Live family that I give you in order to do that. I can't get into all of them in this podcast, but one of them specifically is like a thought bridge or a thought ladder. So I like this thought ladder idea where we think, like if our stomach is the problem area that we're not happy with, for instance, instead of just having these very, very negative thoughts, first we want to notice what thoughts we're having, but we want to start to try to find a thought that's a little easier for us to believe, but feels a little bit more positive. So for instance, if the general thought is my stomach is so terrible, I hate my stomach, I wish I wasn't, so fat, I wish it didn't have so much fat on it or something. If that's our general thought, what if we switch to a thought that's still believable of this is what a human stomach looks like? Now it's totally neutral, that thought, right? This is what a human stomach looks like. And if we really think about that thought, we know it's true and we can believe it right away because we are human and we have that stomach, right? We could also start to think, wow, there's a lot of other people that have similar stomachs to mine, or stomachs that even have more fat on them, or, just from a factual standpoint, right? So we can start to really open up those thoughts a little bit. So instead of just thinking, I hate my stomach, we can think, this is what a stomach looks like. And when we start to just realize, oh, this is what a stomach looks like, it takes out some of that negativity. So what we would do in that case is we start to notice that we're having those very negative thoughts and we shift. We choose a different thought in that moment, which might be this more neutral thought. When we have more neutral thoughts about ourselves, maybe to start with, we don't necessarily have to start off super positive and loving and perfect right away. If we're just starting from a place of more neutral, that is at least during our day going to create more of a neutral feeling, which does not lead to massive overeating and binges. It leads to more just, neutral type actions. Okay. So that's kind of how we start shifting. We have a lot more in the Eat to Live family and the Academy. So we would do the same thing with our confidence and our body image. So that's sort of the tool number one, sort of first bucket of shifts that I would love for you to make that can help you get to that consistency and sustainability in your weight loss and your body image and all that. The second one is self-care. And I have a very particular perspective on self-care. I'm going to go through this one briefly. We'll do more on this later, but I love this idea of self-care being, because typically we hear about self-care being manicures and pedicures and baths and, sort of aesthetic things that have to do with the outside of our body. But I instead want us to shift our definition of self-care, and I want us to shift it to anything that creates a feeling of sort of self-love, a feeling of progress, a feeling of, actually taking care of yourself. So let's look at the difference between, now this is going to maybe sound a little bit weird, but this is exactly what I mean. Let's look at the difference between getting a manicure. Not that there's anything wrong with getting manicures. Okay, so let me just say that first, but I just want to talk about the definition of self-care. So the difference between getting a manicure and doing your budget or getting out of debt, for instance. Okay, so that's like a financial goal maybe. Now, the getting out of debt one might take a really long time. And, I am no stranger to debt from my, past lives of going to expensive college and all these kinds of, using credit cards and things like that. But when I started shifting out of that and realizing that actually paying off those credit cards and paying off that school loan debt and all that actually made me feel so good, the difference between doing that and getting a manicure, worlds of difference, right? So I want us to redefine self-care as anything that moves us forward, that progresses us. Now, let's talk about the manicure for a second. So I look at a manicure like, okay, that's nice and everything, but it's something you have to just keep doing. Like it goes away, the effects of it go away. It's something that you have to keep reapplying in a way, right? Whereas getting out of debt, that's a permanent self-love, self-care type decision, right? Now, but let's talk about the manicure for a second. It's not that there aren't any benefits from it, because let's say that going to get a manicure is actually your release from, the responsibilities of parenting or being at the home doing all the things or whatever. So maybe that is the time that you can take at this moment and maybe that does create a feeling of well-being. But that's the difference I want you to look at here, is this sort of temporary pleasure that disappears and you have to reapply in a way, right? Like taking a bath, those kinds of things. Or is it something that really builds and grows and can sort of compound on itself, right? So getting out of debt is one of those things. Keeping your house clean, for instance, could be another one. Keeping your house free of clutter. Making time for your friends when you don't do that very often, or not doing social media so much, right? Learning to do things that actually build you up instead of sort of deplete you, right? So that's kind of what I want you to look at, the difference between self-care and something that maybe seems like self-care but actually isn't self-care. So be considering self-care in that way of what can I actually do for myself that's going to move me forward, that's going to give me some progress. That's what we want to define self-care as, okay? And then the third thing that I want to talk about today, just very briefly, is worthiness. Because interestingly, as a private coach, as a life coach, I find that all of our issues actually stem from a feeling of lack of worthiness, right? We all feel like we're just not worthy of the thing that we're doing or the thing that we're trying to attempt. And this one is a pretty deep one and it can be slippery to hold on to. But let me just give you a few thoughts on this and I want you to start considering this. So Brené Brown, who is a researcher on guilt and shame, and she's just an incredible woman. You can look up her TED Talks. I'll try to put something in the show notes about her as well if you haven't heard about her. But she talks about worthiness in such a beautiful way that I had never heard before. I heard it from her. And I allowed myself to let it shift my entire thought about worthiness. And so some things that she says about worthiness are that worthiness is inherent. So somebody's self-worth is inherent. It is there from the moment they're born, and it is there at the moment they die, and it never changes. Up or down, more self-worth, less self-worth. It never changes at all, not even a speck, no matter what we do or what we don't do in our life. The way that you can kind of hold on to this a little bit, I go so much more in depth on this in the Academy, and there's many other resources that you can look into this as well, but I think it's totally worth it to start to understand self-worth and understand our own self-worth so that we can feel better during the journey, so that the journey becomes pleasurable and then the end goal becomes pleasurable as well, right? If we have this inner wellspring, I like to think of that like a bubbling spring of just worth and self-worth, and knowing that internally we are always worthy. When we have that and we can hold on to that, it makes the journey so much easier and more pleasurable, and it makes it feel so much more sustainable when we have that. So this idea, self-worth being something, so the example that I like to give is the example of a baby, all right? So when a baby is born, it doesn't matter who the baby grows up to be, that baby we all consider worthy. All of us, like anyone looking at a baby would consider a baby worthy because they're innocent, they haven't done anything wrong, they don't know anything yet, they deserve love and care and all these things. But somewhere along the line in our society, we start to equate self-worth with our actions, what we have done or haven't done. So we start to think that our worthiness comes from what we do or don't do. Now, this is not true. This is crap. And especially if you look at the Brené Brown stuff, it all supports this idea. And you can find this in so many other places as well. This idea that no matter what we do or don't do, we are worthy. We are worthy of everything we want. We are worthy of, just think of like those babies who don't have enough food to eat, right? And are they worthy of food? Absolutely. Are they worthy of love? Absolutely. When does it change? When do they become less worthy of things? Well, they never are, right? Because we are human, because we are all here, we all deserve the same amount of awesomeness, and we all have that within ourselves. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, and we will probably talk about this more in the future, but I don't want to get into it too much today. But it starts to become problematic because we start to think, well, so-and-so is more worthy than this other person because of these things they have done, right? Mother Teresa versus Jeffrey Dahmer kind of an idea, right? But that's actually not how worthiness works. Everyone is as worthy as anyone else, no matter what they do or don't do. Worthiness is inherent. It's 100% there. It's always there. And so I'm going to leave it here. And we have so much more that we can say on this, and we will in the future. As I said, there's so much more in the academy. But I just want you to start asking yourself these questions. How could these things be true? How could these things be true? And how could I incorporate these things into my life? Because I promise you, the stuff that has to do with feelings in the heart and our inner mind and our inner workings, this is everything when it comes to sustainability and long-term, goal seeking and maintenance and keeping of goals, right? All of these things that go together, everything we talked about in this series, they all go together to create this holistic view of what it takes to be successful long-term. And it all comes from the feelings inside of us, whether we love ourselves, whether we're confident, whether we feel we can do it, whether we feel worthy of it. And when you put all of those things together, as well as the things we talked about that are very practical, right? How to use the scale, how to not beat yourself up, how to get into that mindset, how to shift your thoughts deliberately. And then, of course, why are we eating this way? Why do we want to eat healthy food? Why is it so important, right? We're looking at all the specific reasons why we do eat to live, all these practical things. When we put all that together, that is what creates a successful journey. Now, you might be looking at it and going, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much work, right? If we're doing all this self-care, we're working on our thoughts and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it is a lot of work. But guess what? It is the most important work we can ever do, because when we get this stuff down, we are creating a sustainable legacy for not only ourselves. We not only make our life feel good, but we're creating a legacy for others to see as well, our friends and family, children, right? We're creating something that just bubbles over to everyone else. And isn't that what we're here for? Isn't it about love and relationships and connection and creating all of this amazingness for everyone around us? Isn't that what it's all about? Maybe. I just urge you to question it and look for it for yourself. See if it's something that you're interested in. And if you are, I can take you on this whole journey and we'll do this together. Okay? Thank you so much. Guess what? We put on free Eat to Live challenges every so often, and we want you to be part of them. Lately, we've been doing 5-day healthy eating challenges where you get free recipes, meal plans, and grocery lists, as well as prep instructions and so much more to help you learn the rhythm of the Eat to Live diet in an easy, accessible way. And you just might lose some weight while you're at it. Visit thewateringmouth.com/challenge to learn more. Oh, and listen, my dear friend, if you ever felt you were alone in this Eat to Live lifestyle thing, well, you're not. There's a huge, private, safe community of all of us learning how to eat to live, lose the weight, and love the process for good. And it's called the Eat to Live Family. It's my affordable monthly group coaching membership, and there's only one thing missing: you. Find out more at thewateringmouth.com/family.